Hello ladies and gentlemen, I would like to talk a little bit about EQ Next and more specifically about whether they can actually keep their promises. So by now we all know what EQ Next is all about. Now if you don't, please go and check out our previous video on the game. It's called EverQuest Next, the first next gen MMO. You should be able to see a link on the video somewhere or in the description, or even just search the channel. Maybe I've been lazy and I haven't bothered to add the annotation. I do not know. Or maybe the annotations are broke. This is YouTube. Everything breaks. Now that should tell you everything you need to know about the game. So in this video, what I want to do is talk a little bit about SEO. SEO? No, that's search engine. You know why I said that? Because I'm constantly emailed by people claiming that they are the world's best SEO experts. SOE, that's what I tried to say, Sony Online Entertainment. A bit about their history and how that might impact on their ability to deliver on all of these groundbreaking features. So we know that SOE is responsible for EverQuest. Now, after certain key original members see Brad McQuaid, he was basically the guy who practically invented EverQuest. When they moved on from SOE, Sony started to make certain changes to the game that not everybody was exactly happy with. Now, in EverQuest's example, I don't think it was that bad. I mean, the example that comes to the forefront of my mind was the Planes of Power expansion. So what this did was it added a kind of like a... how can I explain? It's like if you play World of Warcraft, it kind of added a Dalaran to the game where everybody would meet in this one location instead of being spread out across the world. But that's kind of a bonus, a positive maybe. But what it did was it added these, I forget what they were called. They were kind of like books. They were like teleport things. You would click on them and it'd teleport you to the plane of power. Plane of knowledge, POC, that was it. It's all coming back to me, good lord. But that kind of made certain abilities in the game redundant. Like druids, I think druids could use special ability where in the druid stones, in kind of like Stonehenge they were in certain zones, they could teleport you to them, and I think another class could teleport as well. My memory's a bit hazy, but they started to add things like that, kind of streamline the game, make other decisions. Now, EverQuest has a very hardcore fan base and user base, so it kind of didn't go down too well. But that is not the biggest absolute mess up they did. Because, ladies and gentlemen, need I say any more than just say Star Wars Galaxies? So, what happened with this was their second major MMO, and major game. I think it had around about 300,000 subscribers in the first year, sorry. And what you've got to think, these are figures before WoW, so that was a really good, amount of paying customers at the time. However, there was a bit of a problem because they decided, for some reason, now I never played Star Wars Galaxies, so I don't have first-hand experience of this, but they decided after a certain amount of months or whatever, the game had been launched. You know what? We'll drastically change the game. So you imagine, I mean, this is a wild example again. You imagine you log into World of Warcraft. You're playing a warrior, but now you're playing a mage. It wasn't quite like that, but it was a drastic change, enough to make people, well, it was more than enough to just completely kill that game. They essentially destroyed that game, and it was a decent game for its time. I think it had a lot of fancy player generated stuff and things like that. But again, my knowledge is not the best on it, so I'm not really going to stay on Star Wars Galaxies all that long. In fact, I'm going to move on. Now, PlanetSide 1 was a bit before my time. Now, I did pick the game up, but I picked it up way too late. I think it was launched in 2003, I think. But don't quote me on that. But I kind of picked it up a few years after that, and nobody was playing, and, it's outdated mechanics. It was built, the internet wasn't really capable of hosting that type of well, it didn't really, not so much hosting, but things like latency. Let's just say the technology wasn't there for that. But the technology's there now. And so when PlanetSide 2 was being touted, and it went into closed and open beta, which I was a part of, kind of like this time last year, I was really interested. I knew it was going to be something amazing. I mean, we also produced a hell of a lot of content around PlanetSide 2 for our YouTube channel. I mean, just check the channel, search for PlanetSide 2, you'll see a lot of stuff. So we go forward, and PlanetSide 2 was launched. Now, it wasn't in a very good state at launch. Now, I think everybody will agree with me when I say this. It was basically a beta. So what they've done is they were in closed beta, then they moved to open beta, and then they launched. However, the launch version of the game was still the beta version of the game because it was absolutely riddled with bugs. Far too many to list. Loads and loads of bugs that are only just being sorted out now, some of them. Or even loads of content missing. I mean, they had to cut out continents. And in fact, Hossin, I think that's how it's pronounced, has only just in the last few days been released to PlanetSide 2 on the live servers. Now, that was something that should have been there anyway, but it wasn't. So what is actually going on? Well, I think it's quite simple. They've made much grander claims than they can actually keep. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, let's not make promises we can't keep. That's hardly the best idea, especially with gamers. I mean, because let's face it, we're the most entitled bunch of gits on the internet you'll ever meet, and we'll just moan about everything, especially if you chop features out of a game, which we're expected to be in a game, and that's kind of made us purchase the game or spend time in the game only to see said feature not appear. That will piss us off greatly. Now, I think with PlanetSide 2, they obviously had a launch date that they had to meet. Now, they're going to need to recoup development costs. This is a pretty standard thing across the industry. Unless, I guess, you're Valve, in which case, well, you can just do whatever the hell you like because you're a privately owned company and you don't have to answer to the board of directors or the shareholders, whereas people like SOE obviously have to do, and more recently Blizzard have to do, because they're, you can buy Blizzard Activision shares. So maybe they'll start pumping out games a little bit faster, but whatever. That's besides the point. And in fact, kind of goes against the point I'm trying to put across, which they were rushed. I think because they were running out of time, they had to make decisions and cut content and then release the game. And is that the best thing to do? I don't know. I mean, obviously they had to do it. It was a situation where I think they just had to do it. If we look at the dates now, we're kind of getting pretty close to PlanetSide 2's official first year birthday. And it's only just sorting out some of the major problems which affected the game since, well, its so-called launch. And this is a year later. Now imagine if the game launched with all the promised features and minimal bugs. How big would the player base be now? Would it be 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times bigger? Who really knows? We never will. To me, it stinks of a bit of a missed opportunity, because PlanetSide 2 is an absolutely fantastic game. I've said this before and I'll say it again. It was my game of the year last year. The sheer scope of the combat is completely unrivaled. You can only really find it in PlanetSide 1, and even then, it's not very good because of the technical limitations of that game. Whereas PlanetSide 2 completely delivers. All that I hope is that they continue to develop that game and try and recoup the lost players, because I honestly believe, and again I touched on this in a previous video I made a few months back, how I believe PlanetSide 2 has lost quite a lot of initial players, or the initial player base, because the game was either too buggy, it didn't run very well, things were broken, blah blah blah, loads of stuff. Players leave and they don't come back. It's very hard to get people back into a game after they leave the game. They move on to greener pastures, as it were. So it kind of pissed me off that it wasn't in an immaculate state at launch. Maybe it's just wishful thinking, but at the end of the day, I think it was, out of the most recent games which have been launched over the last few years, I think that it's kind of one of the most kind of dirty launches. There was a lot of problems. It was kind of just playable. It's sort of, I just wish that it launched in a much better state. So why is all this relevant? Well, I think it kind of highlights why I'm worried about SOE's ability to deliver on EQ Next. Loads of grand claims have been made, and if they meet all these development targets, then surely we'll have one of the first next-gen MMOs on the market. I think in a roundabout way, it's probably EQ's time. They practically invented the modern, or the current modern MMO. They invented the formula. WoW took the formula and refined it. That's what I was trying to say. Now, I use that term lightly. They refined the game in terms of accessibility, or the formula for their game in terms of accessibility. Now, what I'm saying there is they haven't made the game better. They haven't refined it. In some aspects they have, but what they did do was take it onto the next level. All of a sudden, MMOs went from the basement dweller EverQuest player to the socially accepted WoW player. What World of Warcraft has done for the MMO industry cannot be denied. They have brought so many new people in. Priceless. However, they basically built upon what EQ had already made. They just made it more accessible. So the question is, can SOE and EverQuest step up? I really, really hope they can. I mean, I hope to God they can. The type of emergent gameplay they're touting looks to be exactly the type of thing this stagnating MMO market really needs to inject some life back into it. I mean, Jesus Christ, I know it's the sort of game I want to play. I do not want to play the same thing over and over again. Because if you think back to MMOs, what is the most... think back to MMOs, I say. Think back to your first MMO, or even a new MMO. What is the most interesting part of that MMO? It's the exploration. It's finding out where things are, how things work, what classes do what loot drops where, what's the best loot for my class, all this stuff. It's about the exploration. Now, if every server's the same, the experience is always the same. But with the emergent factors in the gameplay they're touting for EverQuest Next, different servers have got completely different locations of things. They might not even have certain things other servers have got. Servers may have a city, another server may not. A server may have some sort of special event running, another one may not. Or it may have a different event running. That type of emergent gameplay is awesome. And I think that's probably the biggest thing EQ Next has got going for it. And I know that's what I need, and I definitely know that's what the MMO market needs. So what do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Given SOE's past, do you think they will be able to deliver when it comes to EQ Next? Is looking back at the company's history the right thing to do? Maybe they have learned from all these lessons. I guess only time will really tell. But deep down inside, I really hope they pull it off. But also a bit deeper down inside, I'm kind of a bit skeptical. Because this goes far and beyond anything PlanetSide 2 promised. Far and beyond. And it's something which could quite literally be the first next-gen MMO. So let me know what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please comment below. And if you like the video, please like the video. Remember to subscribe for more content and all that good stuff. I've been Stylosa, and I'll catch you next time, people. Toodaloo.